How you guys doing? Today is Sunday, December 20th, 2020, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to take you through yesterday's NFL games, along with preseason basketball, college football championships, and of course college basketball and everything to fill in between. So, following Thursday's matchup between the Chargers and the Raiders, which knocked the Raiders a little bit out of the playoff discussion. Starting with yesterday's games, the Buffalo Bills were able to go to Denver, and they were able to beat the Broncos 48-19 as they kind of cruised very easily to beat this team. And with this win, they were able to clinch the third spot in the AFC as they went on to clinch their division with this win. Looking at how both teams fared for the Denver Broncos, their starting quarterback, Drew Lock, would complete 20 of his 32 passes, throwing for 132 yards and a touchdown. On the ground, he also ran for 37 yards, which would give him a total of 169 total yards of offense. And then his only interception came from a fumble that he lost earlier in the game. On the ground, Melvin Gordon was their leading rusher. He had 61 yards on 11 carries and 2 touchdowns. Through the air, Noah Fant had 68 yards on 8 receptions and a touchdown, the only receiver with a touchdown of the day. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Kareem Jackson would finish with 9 total tackles on the day. The team only logged 1 sack. That was logged to Jeremiah Ateochu. Sorry if I butchered your name. Jacob Bobenmeyer would end up recovering a fumble on the day as he ended up with a tackle. And looking at the Buffalo Bills fared, their starting quarterback, Josh Allen, would complete 28 of his 40 passes, throwing for 359 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 33 yards on the ground on 3 carries and 2 touchdowns, which would give him a total of 392 yards of offense. Also on the ground, Zach Moss had 81 yards and 13 carries, and Devin Singletary had 68 yards on 8 carries with a rushing touchdown on the day. Through the air, Stephon Diggs was their leading receiver. He had 147 yards on 11 receptions. And also Cole Beasley had 112 yards on 8 receptions. Going to the players with receiving touchdowns, Dawson Knox had 36 yards on 2 receptions, one of them being a touchdown. And also Jake Kumarow's only reception was a 22-yard touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Tremaine Edmonds, their elite linebacker, and Jordan Poyer both led the team with 8 tackles each. Mario Addison, Tre'Davious White, and Ed Oliver were each able to log sacks for the team. And then also Jerry Hughes was able to recover a fumble, and he had a pretty good game as well. Neither team was able to log an interception, but with this win, the Buffalo Bills are now 11-3 on the season. With this win, they are now 2.5 games over the Miami Dolphins with 2 games left to play for them, and since they own the tiebreaker, the Buffalo Bills, with this win, were able to clinch the third playoff spot in the AFC West so far. And then with this loss, the Denver Broncos are now 5-9, tied with the Los Angeles Chargers for the worst record in their division. And I believe with this loss, they are still they're out of the right now. They're knocked out of the playoff race. And then looking at the other game that transpired last night, the NFC North leading Green Bay Packers were able to beat the Carolina Panthers 24-16. And, of course, before this game, the Green Bay Packers had already clinched a playoff spot. But, of course, this was still a big win because they were competing for the best spot in the division. And looking at how this game fared, the Packers were able to get control early. They led by 18, as much as 18 in the first half. The Panthers tried to come back, but the Packers were able to keep it at arm's length for the majority of the game, and they were able to get a big win. Looking at how the Carolina Panthers fared, their starting quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, would complete 21 of his 35 passes, throwing for 258 yards, and he also ran for 26 yards on 4 carries and a touchdown, which would give him a total of 284 yards of offense, and his rushing touchdown was his only touchdown of the day. The leading rusher for the Panthers was Mike Davis, who had 59 yards on 14 carries. And then through the air, the leading receiver was DJ Moore, who had 131 yards and 6 receptions. They're on the defensive side of the ball, Rasul Douglas was their leading tackler. He had 7 tackles on the day. And Brian Burns and Derek Brown were each able to log 2 sacks for the team, as Ife Obada logged the other one. They had 5 sacks as a team. Looking at how the Green Bay Packers fared at home, their go-to quarterback Aaron Rodgers would complete 20 of his 29 passes for 143 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 26 yards on 5 carries and a touchdown, as that would add up to a total of 169 yards of offense. On the ground, their leading rusher was Aaron Jones, who had 145 yards and 20 carries and a touchdown. And then he also had 13 yards through the air, which would give him 158 yards of offense with that touchdown. Their leading receiver was Alan Lazard, who had 56 yards on 5 carries, and their only receiving touchdown went to Robert Tonyan, who had 18 yards on 3 receptions. On the defensive side of the ball, Christian Kirksey had led the team with 9 total tackles by himself. Adrian Amos and Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith they were each able to log a sack for the team. And then Kevin King was able to recover a fumble on the day, as he also had 6 tackles on the day. There was not a single reception logged in this game, not an interception between both games yesterday, but it was still great football to be played. And with this win, the Green Bay Packers are now 11-3. They now, of course, they've already won their division, and looking at the NFL playoff picture, they were able to move half a game ahead of the New Orleans Saints. So the Saints they must win their next game, and they're playing against the Kansas City Chiefs. But with this win for the Packers, they may have done a really good job of clinching the top spot in the NFC. And depending on how the Chiefs Saints game goes, the Green Bay Packers might have a 1-game hold on this on the NFC title going into Week 16. And then really quickly looking at how the NFC South is shaping. With this loss, the Panthers are now 4-10. Carolina Panthers, along with the Atlanta Falcons, are the only team in the NFC that have been eliminated from playoff contention. And then really quickly, looking out to what's going on Sunday with Sunday's matchups. Looking out to what's going on today, starting with the 1 o'clock games. The Atlanta Falcons will host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 1 o'clock. The Falcons are already out, but the Buccaneers are still fighting for a playoff spot as they are sitting in the wild card currently. The Dallas Cowboys are going to host the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are still mathematically in it, and the Dallas Cowboys are still fighting for their division title because the Giants aren't that far ahead of them. The Tennessee Titans are going to face off against the Detroit Lions. The Tennessee Titans are still trying to fight for playoff seeding as they currently have the same record as the Colts but are leading them on a tiebreaker, and a win here could help secure their chances of winning their division. Speaking of their division, the Indianapolis Colts are going to face off against the 4-9 Tennessee Titans, or the Houston Texans, Colts versus Texans. The Colts and the Titans still have the same record, but the Titans have the tiebreaker over them. If the Titans were to lose, the Colts would be able to overtake them in the division. Also 1 o'clock, the 8-5 Dolphins are going to host the 6-7 Patriots, as the Dolphins and the Patriots are both competing for playoff seeding. One win knocks the Patriots out of playoff contention for the first time in a long time. And then the Dolphins could move up higher in playoff contention with a win over here. Looking at 1 o'clock, the 6-7 Vikings are going to face off against the 6-7 Bears. Of course, you know what a win could do for both teams, as a loss would probably knock both teams to the very bottom of playoff contention, even though they still might be able to still compete with 2 weeks left. At 1 o'clock as well, the Washington football team are going to host the 9-4 Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks have a lot to play for as the Washington football team. They're still trying to compete and they're still trying to hold on to the best record in their division, so that's going to be a very interesting game as well. Also at 1 o'clock, the 8-5 Ravens will host the 1-5 Jacksonville Jaguars, as the Ravens are still fighting for a spot in the AFC playoff picture, as they are the first team outside of the bubble. At 4:05, the 9-4 Rams are going to face off against the Jets, who still have yet to win a game this season. The Rams are still fighting for a playoff spot, as they currently sit at the top of their division, but not by record. They have the same record as the Seahawks, and a loss here could see the Seahawks overtaking them in the division, but it's the 0-13 Jets, so I doubt that's going to happen. Also at 4:05, the 7-6 Cardinals are going to face off against the 4-8-1 Eagles. The Eagles still have their division to fight for, and the Cardinals are still at the bottom of the NFC wildcard picture as of right now, so both teams have a lot to play for. At 4:25, the 10-3 New Orleans Saints are going to face off against the 12-1 Kansas City Chiefs. Right now, the Chiefs are only leading their division they're only leading the AFC by a game, and so a win for them could help seal their spot in the AFC. And in the NFC, the Saints need to catch up to the Packers, who now have half a game lead over the Saints, and a win could see the Saints jump right back up there. And at 8:20, the New York Giants are going to host the Cleveland Browns at 8:20. That's going to be a big game, as the Giants are still fighting for they're fighting in the NFC East division picture, and the Cleveland Browns they're sitting at the top of the wild card with a 9-4 record, with the same record as the Colts. So I think a win here could see them retain their top spot in the wild card. And then with that said, I'm going to jump really quickly into college football, because college football championships were played yesterday, and just going through it. And Friday as well. Starting with Friday's games, the Pac-12 championship saw the 13th ranked USC Trojans face off against the Oregon Ducks. And in this game, the Oregon Ducks were able to beat the USC Trojans 31-24. In a game where the Ducks kind of controlled it for a lot of the game, they kept it out of arm's length. The USC brought it to within a touchdown at the very end. But at the end, it was Oregon who came through. Both their quarterbacks, Tyler Show and Anthony Brown, both threw for Anthony Brown was Anthony Brown was their other quarterback, and he threw for 2 touchdowns along with Tyler Shove. And then Caden Slovis for USC threw 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Not the best game for USC, but Oregon was still able to come through and get a big win for their team. And, of course, they were able to secure the 2020 Pac-12 championship, even though they weren't even ranked to begin with. Jumping to the Big Ten championship, the 4th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes faced up against the 14th-ranked Northwestern Wildcats, and in this game, the Ohio State Buckeyes were able to beat them 22-10. The biggest performance coming from Ohio State running back Trey Sermon, who had 331 yards on 29 carries and 2 touchdowns. He also had 4 receiving yards, give him 335 total yards of offense. Big game for him, and with this win, Ohio State is now 6-0. They won the Big Ten championship, but they may have secured themselves a spot in the college football playoff. With this loss, Northwestern is now 6-2, and they were winning for most of this game. They were winning at the half, but Ohio State was able to shut them out of the entire second half to get a very important win for their team. Jumping to the Big Ten championship, 6th-ranked Iowa State was facing off against 10th-ranked Oklahoma. At the end of the first half, Oklahoma was up 24-7. They were up 17-0 as they were at one point. Iowa State came back. Well, they almost came back, and they turned it over on the very last possession as Oklahoma was able to get a really, really close win. For Oklahoma, Spencer Rattler threw for 272 yards with a touchdown. He also ran for 17 yards with a touchdown, giving him 289 total yards of offense and 2 touchdowns, 2 very big touchdowns to help Oklahoma jump to 8-2 and get a very big win in their conference, whereas Iowa State finished 8-3, and Oklahoma yet again, for I think the 3rd or 4th year in a row, has been named the champions of the Big 12. But don't take my word on the number. But once again, it's a streak that Oklahoma's been able to keep for a very long while. I doubt they're in contention for the college football playoff, but this is still a very big win for them. Looking at the ACC championship, the 3rd-ranked Clemson Tigers were able to beat the 2nd-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish in a revenge game where, in the last game, Notre Dame beat Clemson in Notre Dame, and their fans stormed the field, and it was a whole thing. It was that very game when they played against DJ Ugalele, Trevor Lawrence's freshman backup, in a game that went all the way down to the very end, but Notre Dame pulled that one out. But this time, Clemson just ran the table with them, beating them 34-10. For Clemson, their big performance came from their elite starting quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. He completed 25 of his 36 passes, throwing for 322 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. He also ran for 90 yards on 14 carries and a touchdown, which would give him 412 total yards of offense, 3 total touchdowns, and then his only turnover coming from his interception. Big game for him as Clemson claims yet another ACC title game, the 3rd in Trevor Lawrence's career. And with this win, I think they have solidified a spot for themselves in the college football playoff, whereas Notre Dame, originally being number 2, might have fallen out of contention, but we still have to see what it comes down to at the very end, as Clemson basically shut them out of it. Looking at the SEC championship, Alabama took Florida all the way down to the very end, even though Alabama dominated the first half. Florida came out with a very strong second half, but Alabama was still able to keep it they were still able to keep their distance to Florida. The elite performance this game would come from Najee Harris. Even though, first off, I'll say Mac Jones did have an amazing game. Mac Jones he completed 33 of his 43 passes, throwing for 418 yards, throwing 5 touchdowns and an interception. And then the other big performance came from Najee Harris, who had 178 yards and 31 carries and 2 touchdowns. He also had 67 yards on 5 receptions and 3 touchdowns, giving him a total of 245 total yards of offense with 5 touchdowns on the day. 2 on the ground, 3 through the air, which would help Alabama go to 11-0, which would help them win the SEC yet again. That's yet another trophy in Nick Saban's trophy case. As Florida put up a big fight, Kyle Trask threw for 480 yards and 3 touchdowns, but it simply wasn't enough. And Alabama Clemson tied as they have basically cemented a spot for themselves in the college football playoff. I think they and Clemson are the only teams that we know for a fact are going to be in it. And then looking at the AAC championship game, 9th-ranked Cincinnati was able to beat the 23rd-ranked Tulsa 27-24 in a game that went all the way down to the very end, to a game-winning field goal by Cincinnati from Cole Smith on the very final play, which would send them through. With this win, they are now 9-0, and their biggest performer came from their quarterback Desmond Ridder, who completed 19 of his 29 passes, throwing for 269 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 83 yards on 6 carries and a touchdown, which would give him a total of 352 yards of offense. Big game for Cincinnati, as they jumped to 9-0. They finished their regular season 9-0. They might have a chance of playing in the playoff, as Tulsa drops down to 6-2 with this loss. Very impressive game of college football, or a very impressive outing of college football. And then to finish the football circuit, jumping out into soccer to show you what's been going on in those leagues, was especially yesterday. With no crazy big matchups happening Friday, except for CONCACAF Champions League, which is the North American, Central, and South American Champions League. But looking yesterday, starting with the Premier League, starting with the Premier League matches, Liverpool was able to beat Crystal Palace 7-0. As Roberto Firmino, their striker, was able to get 2 goals. Their elite winger Sadio Mane was able to get a 35th minute goal, and their other elite winger Mo Salah scored in the 81st and 84th minutes to give Liverpool yet a big win and a big jump in the table. With this win, they are sitting at the very top with 31 points, looking over the rest, as of course there are some Premier League games left to be played. Manchester City was able to beat Southampton 1-0 as Raheem Sterling scored the only goal of the game in the 16th minute. With this win, right now Manchester City is sitting 6th in the table, as they still played one less game than a lot of other teams, but they're still finding their way moving up after not an impressive start to the season, but they're finding a way back. Everton was able to beat Arsenal as well, holding with the own goal, and Mina in the 45th minute they were able to outscore Nicolas Pepe's only penalty kick goal. Everton right now is sitting 2nd in the Premier League, as Tottenham has yet to play their 14th game, but as of right now, Everton is sitting 2nd in the table, 5 points behind Liverpool as it stands. And then looking into today's Premier League matchups as to what's going on, Tottenham Hotspur is going to play Leicester City at 9:15 a.m. Man U is going to face off against Leeds United at 11:30. As right now, starting off with Tottenham Hotspur is sitting 3rd in the table. With a win here, they could see themselves moving back up into 2nd. Leicester City is in 4th place, right behind them, just 1 point behind them, so that's a very big matchup. And then Man U is sitting 7th in the table. As a win here could see them move up a little bit more in the table. A win here could see them jump up maybe about 2, 3, 4 spots in the table. And those are the only games that are going on today in the Premier League. Jumping to yet another league, moving to the German Bundesliga, Bayern Munich was able to beat Bayer Leverkusen 2-1. Robert Lewandowski's 2 goals, including his goal in extra time on the final possession, would see Bayern Munich overtake Bayer Leverkusen for the top spot in the Bundesliga for their last game of 2020. So this would be a very big game from both sides. Also looking at what's going on in the Bundesliga for the rest of that day, Borussia Mönchengladbach lost to Hoffenheim, which saw them drop to 8th in the table. RB Leipzig tied with FC Cologne. With this draw, RB Leipzig is now 3rd in the table, tied with Bayer Leverkusen, as both teams are now 2 points behind Bayern Munich as it stands. And Borussia Dortmund, they were able, on Friday, Borussia Dortmund lost to Union Berlin, as Yusufa Moukoko, their 16-year-old prodigy, became the youngest player to ever score in a Bundesliga game, but it simply wasn't enough. As Borussia Dortmund now drops to 4th, well, they're still 4th in the table, as they are 8 points removed from the top of the table. And I think they're still getting things moved around, especially considering they most recently fired their manager. And then looking at what's going on today in the Bundesliga, Not or just Freiburg versus Berlin, Wolfsburg versus Stuttgart. Not really big games with a lot on the line, considering what's going on in that league right now. Right now, jumping to Italian Serie A, into yesterday's games. Juventus was able to beat Parma 4-0. Cristiano Ronaldo scored 2 goals yesterday. Of course, he was mad for simply not winning the best player in the world. But with this win, Juventus jumped to third in the table as they're only 1 game removed from the top, as AC Milan and Inter Milan have yet to play their games today. Looking at what's going on with Serie A today, Inter's going to play against Spezia at 9 o'clock. And Roma's going to play against Atalanta at 12. Napoli versus Lazio. AC Milan going to face off against Sassuolo, as AC Milan and Inter Milan are sitting at the top of the table competing for the top spot. AS Roma could see themselves jumping right back up to tying Juventus tying Juventus at third in the table. So, of course, Serie A is looking incredibly close, and a lot of big games that are going to happen today are going to decide what happens in that league. Looking out into La Liga, Atletico Madrid was able to beat Elche 3-1. Luis Suarez, their elite striker, was able to score 2 goals as Diego Costa. His penalty kick in the 80th minute would give them their 3rd goal and, of course, the 3 points that they need to advance. With this win, Atletico Madrid is sitting at the top of the table despite playing 3 less games than Real Sociedad, and 1 less game than Real Madrid. Atletico Madrid sitting very comfortably at the top, even though they have a few games of cushion. If you look at how the table sits right now. Continuing on, Barcelona drew with Valencia as Lionel Messi scored along with Araujo, and countered that up with Diakabi's and Gomez's goal in the second half. Valencia. This was a very big game, which would see Valencia and Barcelona kind of sit where they are. Valencia now 12th in La Liga, as Barcelona now jumps up to 5th after a not so great start to the season, but they're kind of getting it back together, as right now they've played 1 more game than Atletico Madrid, but they are currently 8 points removed from the top, so of course they need to get that fixed. And then Sevilla was able to tie with Real Valladolid, as Ocampos' penalty kick was countered by Garcia's goal in the 86th minute. Right now, Sevilla is sitting 6th in the league. And then looking out to today's games in La Liga, because Real Madrid still has yet to play. Real Madrid, they're going to end up... Real Madrid's going to end up facing Eibar today at 3 o'clock. That's the only really big game that's going on in that league. And then jumping out to Ligue 1, PSG is going to face off against Lille at 3 o'clock, as of course PSG is currently they're kind of in an arms race at the top of Ligue 1 right now. As it stands, they are 2 games removed from the top of the table. They could pass Lyon with a win today, and facing off against Lille, a win here could see themselves sitting at the very top of Ligue 1 following today. So of course there's a lot going on with soccer today. And following NFL, college football, and soccer, that's everything going on with football today. Now jumping into basketball, starting off with college basketball, because these basketball games are actually being counted. Looking out to Friday's games, eighth ranked West Virginia was able to beat unranked Iowa State 70-65. Derek Culver was able to score 18 points and add in 12 rebounds. With this win, they are 7-1, 1-0 in the Big 12. With this loss, Iowa State is now 1-4, as they are 0-2 in the Big 12. 10th ranked Tennessee was able to beat Tennessee Tech, who still has yet to win a game. Tennessee won 103-49. Jaden Springer's 21 points would see Tennessee jump to 4-0 on the season. Also, unranked BYU was able to beat 18th ranked San Diego State 72-62, as Alex Barcelo's 22 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists led the way. Matt Mitchell scored 35 points for San Diego State, which was more than half of their points, but it simply wouldn't be enough. With this win, BYU is now 7-2. With this loss, San Diego State is now 5-1. They are 4-1 at home. And then looking out to last night's games, first-ranked Gonzaga was able to be third-ranked Iowa 99-88 behind Jalen Suggs' 27 points and 7 rebounds. Luka Garza scored 30 points and 10 rebounds as Iowa was handed their first loss of the season. Gonzaga is now 4-0. Second-ranked Baylor went to Kansas State. They were able to beat them 100-69 behind Makio Teague's 23 points and 10 rebounds. Baylor is now 5-0, 1-0 in the Big 12. Kansas State is now 3-5, 1-1 in the Big 12. Seventh-ranked Villanova hosted unranked St. Joseph's and were able to beat them 88-68 behind Jeremiah Robinson's 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists. Villanova is now 7-1 on the season following this win. 12th ranked Wisconsin was able to beat 23rd ranked Louisville 85-48, pretty convincingly. Michael Potter had 20 points and 7 rebounds, as Quinn Slazinski had 11 points and 5 rebounds. Big win for him in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Wisconsin is now 6-1 as Louisville drops to 4-1 following this 37-point loss. 15th ranked Florida State was beaten by visiting unranked UCF 86-74 as Brandon Mann finished with 32 points and 6 rebounds as MJ Walker had 22 points for Florida State. 22nd ranked North Carolina was able to beat Kentucky 75-63. This is the first time Kentucky has started 1-5 since 1926. That I do know because I saw that on Instagram yesterday. Armando Bacot led the way for UNC with 14 points and 8 rebounds. And 20th ranked Ohio State was able to beat unranked blue blood UCLA 77-70 as Dwayne Washington had 14 points on 5 rebounds. Ohio State is now 6-1 as UCLA drops to 5-2. Looking out to today's matchups, 9th ranked Creighton is going to face off against UConn on FS1 at 12 o'clock. 19th ranked Rutgers is going to host 13th ranked Illinois on ESPN2 at 1 o'clock. 11th ranked Texas hosts unranked Oklahoma State at 2 o'clock on Longhorn Network. At 4 o'clock, 6th ranked Houston is going to face off against Alcorn State, who still has yet to win a game this season. They're 0-1. And then at 7 o'clock, 4th ranked Michigan State is going to go to Chicago to go face off against Northwestern, who's 3-1 so far. That's going to be on Big Ten Network, and that's going to be everything that's going on today. And then looking at preseason NBA basketball, starting with Friday, because preseason basketball is officially over. It doesn't pick up until Tuesday. But looking into Friday's matchups, the Philadelphia 76ers were able to win their second preseason game as they beat the Pacers 113-107. Ben Simmons had 9 points and 8 assists as he looked to be in form. Domantas Sabonis had 26 points and 11 rebounds. For the Miami Heat, they were able to get their first win of the preseason as they beat the Toronto Raptors 117-105, led by KZ Okpala's 24 points. The New York Knicks were able to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers 119-83 as Emmanuel quickly led the way with his 22 points. The Knicks are now 3-1 in the preseason, probably the only time that they'll probably be 3-1 for a long time. The Nets were able to beat the Celtics 113-89 as KD looked to be in form, dropping 25 points in the first 3 quarters. The New Orleans Pelicans were able to beat the Milwaukee Bucks 127-113 as Zion Williamson dropped 31 points and 9 rebounds of his own. The Bulls were able to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder 105-103 as Lauri Markkanen dropped 25 points of his own. In Denver, the Nuggets were able to beat the Trailblazers 129-96 as Paul Millsap dropped 24 points and 5 rebounds. And the Los Angeles Lakers were able to beat the Phoenix Suns 114-113 as Anthony Davis was able to drop 35 points of his own. And looking into last night's preseason matchups, the Atlanta Hawks were able to beat the Memphis Grizzlies 117-116 behind Danilo Gallinari's 19 points. The Orlando Magic were able to beat the Charlotte Hornets 120-117 behind Nikola Vucevic's 18 points and 12 rebounds. And the Wizards were able to beat the Detroit Pistons 99-96 behind Thomas Bryant's 22 points and 7 rebounds. With that said, that is everything that's been going on since that captures Friday the 18th and yesterday, which is Saturday the 19th. I hope all is well, and I will get back to you tomorrow following tomorrow's NFL football matchups in addition to soccer, the NBA, or there's nothing going on in the NBA, I'm sorry, and then college basketball and everything going on there. With that said, I hope all is well. I want to thank you for listening to all 28 and a half minutes of this piece. I hope all is well, and I will continue with the Elite tomorrow. Once again, thanks for listening to my piece, and peace out.